slowly come in to the video chat room. I'm David Layfield, and if you're here, you got an early access invitation that we send out to folks that have been to our weekly talk show before. And I'm here to answer your questions before a lot more questions start streaming in. So we won't be sending out an invitation to the larger group for another 10 or so minutes. We send out an email right before this to over 300,000 people that are our users and invite them in. And you are in a select group of a couple of thousand folks that have visited this talk show room in the past month or so. So does anyone have any questions? Otherwise, I'll wait for questions to come in and also wait until some of the larger group starts to file in. And thanks for the tweet, Danielle. If you all like what we're doing, please tweet about us. You can click that tell a little bird button over on desktop. It's on the left side of the screen, and I'm not sure where it is on mobile, but if you click that tell a little bird, it'll tweet out an automatic message telling your friends about our little talk show here. Also, on top of that, I would recommend that you follow us on Blab. In the screen that you see me in here at the top, you're going to see our screen name, Affordable Housing Online, and then a little man with a plus button. If you click that, you'll follow us on Blab, and then you'll be automatically notified whenever we come online, and you can very quickly jump on and participate in the live call. As Nathan is pointing out in the chat stream, if you want to come on live and ask a question of me, you can just click that join button on the box next to me, and I will bring you into the video chat, and you can ask me any affordable housing related questions you have. I'll try to answer them on the fly. Usually have an answer. If I don't, I'll get back with you. But usually I can give you a fairly decent answer. And then a little after 3 o'clock, I will go through the list of Section 8 waiting list openings that we found in the last week since I last talked to you. We've got 3 or 4 new ones we want to talk about. Again, we have a team of researchers that spend their days scouring social media, housing authority websites, and newspaper sites looking for Section 8 waiting list openings. And we do a good job of cataloging those. We believe we've got over 400 and believe that we have the best list for affordable housing assistance in the country. So, all right. Let's wait until that email hits everyone's inboxes. It should happen anytime now. Danielle, so how's your housing search coming, Danielle? I've got a bunch of questions that have been that have been provided beforehand. I'll answer those, but I'll wait until the larger group starts to arrive. Again, if this is your first time here, I'm David Layfield with Affordable Housing Online. I founded Affordable Housing Online about 14 years ago. And I'm an affordable housing professional. I have been an affordable housing developer. I managed a federal housing program in Washington for a few years, and I'm an affordable housing advocate. Generally, I like to advocate on the national level with Congress and others for affordable housing finance programs. And through Affordable Housing Online, we provide the best information about affordable housing assistance. We have over 400 Housing Authority Section 8 waiting list openings that we've identified all on one page. You can find that information at affordablehousingonline.com. We have a team of researchers that has researched about 44 different states for their public housing waiting lists, and we have all that information available too at the same place, affordablehousingonline.com. So Danielle just got an update list, a lot more on there. Yeah. So you got the email that just went out to everyone with our new three or four new waiting lists that we found this week, and I'll talk about those in a few minutes when everyone starts to arrive. All right, so folks are starting to slowly file in. Hi, Sheila. How are you doing? And I'll do a shout out to Shane, the CEO of Blab. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for creating such an incredible tool. We've been doing this for almost a couple of months now, and is a video tool that we've been looking for to be able to connect to our users, and it's incredible to be able to connect with low-income renters who come looking for housing assistance at our website. We serve about 1 million per month, and so it's an incredible way to have a conversation with them, to try and give back and try and help folks that usually can't find assistance. You can't call HUD, you can't call the federal government, you usually can't even get a phone call through to the Housing Authority to get any decent information. So I'm happy to be able to come on. I wish I had more time to do this. I thought about actually doing it randomly throughout the week when I have some downtime. So I haven't tried that one yet, and don't know how many people would show up if I just all of a sudden decide one afternoon I felt like talking, but may try that too. Anyway, thanks. I really appreciate this product. And Derek does a really good job of keeping up with all the bugs that we turn up as we're doing it. So thank you very much. All right, looks like we have a couple more people that filed in, and email should have started to hit folks' inboxes any minute in the last minute or so. So we normally see 30, 40 people come into the chat room, and I'll start answering questions. If anyone here has a question to hit me with, I like working on my feet. So just go ahead and shoot. I have a couple of questions already that came in from users over the past week that we'll get into. All right, good. I have one coming in, so I can start talking. So Danielle, you're welcome. I'm very excited that I can use this venue to help folks. So Marley Ghost has submitted a question. Hi, I've been sending out applications for income-based housing, but getting requests for $30 to $50 for filing fees. I think you answered this last week, but I missed that part, I think. Should I just ignore these apartments? So a good question, and application fees are really prohibitive for affordable housing seekers. And for that reason, HUD has a policy, at least with public housing and Section 8, that housing authorities may not charge an application fee. HUD's position on that is that the costs associated with an application, a credit check, a criminal background check, which do cost a potential landlord some money, and the overhead costs of reviewing an application and trying to assess whether or not you're a good renter, for example, sending out reference requests, doing income verifications, and that sort of thing. So in public housing and in the Housing Choice Voucher Program, there is no application fee. It's actually against the regulations. So it's against the law for them to charge a fee. However, in the private market, and even with government subsidized private affordable housing, so let's say a project-based Section 8 property, that's different. The cost of doing application review and analysis, credit checks, criminal background checks, all that kind of stuff that has to be done when bringing someone into a property, that cost is not covered with the subsidy that they are provided at the project level. So, for example, properties that I own, they're affordable. Many of them are subsidized, where a tenant pays rent based on their income. However, we still charge an application fee, but we always make sure that it's a reasonable fee. For example, I think most of ours are around $30, and it's designed to cover just the actual cost. So a criminal check and a credit check usually cost a landlord around $30. So your question is, should you just ignore the ones that have $30 to $50 application fees? I think if you ignore them, you're missing an opportunity, because you'll have properties that you qualify for and that are real housing opportunities. However, at the same time, you have a limit as to how much money you can spend on application fees. So you have to decide one by one which ones make sense. Certainly, if there's a long waiting list, you shouldn't be paying them an application fee. And usually, if there's a waiting list, there's not a fee until you come up on the waiting list to a point that they have to actually start processing your application and determining whether or not you qualify. They normally won't charge you a fee. If they want to charge you a fee, even though there's a waiting list, then I wouldn't do it, because you're spending money now for something that could be a year or two away. If you've been on the waiting list and you rise to the top and they ask for an application fee, you probably should consider doing it. Now, what if it's a property that has existing vacancy right now? You first of all have to think about, okay, do I think I'm even going to qualify for this property? And if it's a tax credit property, for example, and there's no subsidy, then you need to be able to pay all of the rent. So you need to know what the rent is for that property. And if your income isn't high enough to pay the full rent, then one of the things you're going to end up failing on in the screening process is adequate income. So don't waste your money on a filing fee or an application fee if you know you don't have enough income to pay the full rent on your own. Another thing to think about is what your credit score is. If you know you have a horrible credit score, then you're really going to struggle getting any property to tell you yes. And so what's going to happen is you're going to apply, they're going to pull your credit, it's going to be terrible, they're going to say no. And you're going to do this over and over again. You're going to spend 30, 40, 50 bucks on each one and never get anywhere because you have poor credit. So what I would do, I wouldn't just not submit. I would tell the manager upfront, I have poor credit. In fact, here's a copy of my credit report that I pulled on my own, and here are its weaknesses. This is where I went wrong in the past. And do you think it would make it past your screening process? Before I even pay you a fee, do you think that I would qualify? And most managers are going to say yes or no. They're going to tell you right away, and yeah, you've defaulted on X, or you have an eviction, whatever, you're going to automatically be kicked out of our system. And usually this isn't a person that's looking at your application. It's literally a piece of software that pulls in specific parameters about your credit profile and creates a score. And that score can be customized at the landlord level. The landlord can kind of tell the credit bureau what's most important to them, what are their priorities. So it can be softened or hardened based on the landlord's credit parameters. So there's no person, there's just a machine looking at your score saying, yes, they qualify or no, they don't. And then the property manager doesn't have a lot of leeway there because it's just says rejected and they move on to the next applicant. So, but the property manager does know how the machine looks at it and how the machine scores it, and can probably say right off the top, yeah, you probably shouldn't waste your time, or yes, I think you might make it. So it's a complex question. Long answer, but hopefully that was that was adequate feedback for you. All right, I'll keep talking. Folks are starting to file in as our promotion emails go out. Again, I'm David Layfield. I'm the founder of Affordable Housing Online, and I say a lot, don't I? Oh well. I started Affordable Housing Online about 14 or 15 years ago when I realized that low-income Americans didn't really have a good place to go on the internet to find information about housing assistance. And when I say housing assistance, I mean affordable rental housing apartments and Section 8 waiting list information, public housing waiting list information, any sort of housing programs. And the government has dozens and dozens and dozens of programs at the federal, state, and local levels. So I decided to help solve that problem. I created Affordable Housing Online, which is a little search engine for folks to find affordable housing opportunities. And today we serve around 1 million low-income renters a month coming to our sites looking for information about affordable housing assistance. We have the most complete database of Section 8 waiting list openings. We have over 400. I think the last count was like 420 or so. Some of them are open all the time. Some of them open and close, and we keep track of all of those. We have a team of researchers that are always looking for new openings. We have public housing waiting list information for 44 states right now. So that's a pretty good database, and we're constantly working on that. We have over 70,000 affordable apartment communities, rental communities in our database that are federally subsidized, and we have all sorts of information about them. You can find information about income qualification, whether or not you qualify, on our website at affordablehousingonline.com. You can see what the fair market rents are, what the government says rents should be at for a given market. All you have to do is type in your city and state or your county. And by the way, that city, state, and county search is a really good kind of market report if you want to see what available housing there is in your market. All you got to do is at affordablehousingonline.com, type in your city and state of your county. It'll give you a list of properties. It'll give you a list of income limits, all sorts of stuff. So I'll keep answering some questions. Let's see. Kamara Jackson. I have been in housing in DuPage for 5.5 years. My son and I have cancer, and we have been given a 30-day notice from our leasing office. What can we do to prevent being in the streets this winter? Okay, yeah, that's tough. I'm really sorry. Both you and your son, if I'm reading correctly, have cancer, and you have been given a 30-day notice. So I'm assuming the 30-day notice is an eviction notice. And first, I guess I would need to know what the eviction notice is for. Is it for non-payment? Is it for some other lease term violation? But the first thing I would recommend is that you, and Johnny Pappas makes a point, you can get a lawyer. I would recommend that you contact a legal aid attorney. Because it's a bit of a crisis, right? You really need to get representation as quickly as you can. 30 days is going to go by really fast. So, and I'm not a lawyer, and I don't like to give legal advice. So when it comes down to something like this, the answer to the question normally is contact a legal aid attorney. If you Google legal aid attorney, legal AID attorney, and then your city and state or your county, you're going to find a directory of legal aid attorneys. Legal aid attorneys are attorneys that work for free or sometimes a tiny fee, depending on your income. That they'll want to see what your income is, and they're funded by grants or whatever. So I think that's the best way to go with that. Sorry, I can't give you anything more detailed, but I like to stay away from legal questions just because they're difficult. Oh, I'm sorry, you had more information there. We live in a privately owned building. It's 2-bedroom, and my daughter stays with us too. Yeah, so you have a private landlord who's giving you an eviction notice, and then so contact the legal aid attorney. But another way is to just go to the landlord and hope that they're human and say, look, can I work this out? Is there a way to negotiate a softer settlement? This is my situation. Please try and be, try to give me some human interest. Okay. So our voucher through HUD and DuPage recently terminated our voucher without a good cause. I would not know where to look for an attorney since we are low income. Yeah. So Kamara and Nathan, if you would, for her, she's in DuPage. If you would find a link for her to a legal aid attorney in that area, because I think there's more to this problem. If you had a voucher and the voucher was terminated, I think you need to dig into that a little bit deeper. So, yeah, thanks, Johnny Pappas. Thanks for chiming in there. Good advice. All right. Any other questions? Anybody that wants to come on the video chat with me, all you have to do is hit join, the join button, and I'm happy to take your questions. The main email, Nate said, is the main email gone out yet? Yeah. So folks should start. A lot more folks should start joining here soon once that email hits inboxes. Johnny Pappas, man, you're on the ball. Look at that. Pro bono options for DuPage County. Thank you. So, all right. I'm just going to start going through some of the questions that we had compiled that has come in since last week's talk. If you've got a question, just go ahead and type it there in the box. And I'll get to it, but I'm going to go ahead and start answering some of the questions that we had come in last week. So RD Warrior 123 last week said, I received a voucher on August 1st, but I still can't use it due to a reasonable accommodation request that has not been answered, and no apartments will take my voucher. What can I do? And so the fact that many apartments won't accept vouchers as form of payment is a growing problem in the country right now. And you have an additional problem in that you have a handicap, some sort of disability that requires a reasonable accommodation. So it compounds the issue. A reasonable accommodation, if you don't know, is when you ask a landlord to accommodate you based on your disability. So I think the example I gave in the past is if you're in a wheelchair and you're in an apartment that has a stove unit that has the controls on the back like they traditionally do, and you can't reach them safely. Maybe you can reach across if you're reaching across a burner or whatever. They make special handicap accessible stove units that have controls that run along the front. So then you can sit there in your chair and you can control the stove that way. So if you ask the landlord, okay, I'm in a wheelchair and I need a reasonable accommodation. I need you to replace the stove that's there now with one with front controls. That's a reasonable accommodation because they have to spend $500 or $600 to replace the stove to accommodate you. So at least in a federally funded property, they're required to do a reasonable accommodation. So the question is, what do I do if the voucher location time period runs out while I'm looking for that reasonable accommodation? And the answer is you need to go to the housing authority and ask for a reasonable accommodation from them on time frame. They reasonably need to accommodate the fact that you have a more difficult housing search than everybody else. So if it's a 60-day or a 90-day requirement to find a rental before your voucher expires, and you've documented that you've gone to this property, and folks aren't willing to accommodate your specific disability, then they should give you more time. And so I think that's the best way to go about doing it. Okay, I have Capricorn at Heart that's requesting to join the video chat. I'll bring you in. I'll warn you that many times when users try to join our video chat, bandwidth issues can make it very difficult. It may help if you choose audio only mode. I'm not sure if that does the trick or not, but many times if you're on a 3G connection, it's going to be difficult. I'm trying to bring you in now, Capricorn at Heart, and it's doing what it always does. There's a pulsing symbol, and you never join. But we'll keep trying. In the meantime, see if I have any new incoming questions. Not right now, so I'll go ahead and continue with the questions that we had going into this one. Let's see, Nithya09 asked, how long does it take to get into place if you were number 1,000? And this is just a version of a question that we get very, very often. And there's really no real answer to the question because it's all relative. If you're number 1,000 on a waiting list for a city or a county that only turns over 10 vouchers a year, then that waiting list is 100 years long, which is ridiculous, right? Nobody waits that long. But simple math, 10 vouchers a year gets processed. There's 1,000 people on the waiting list. That means it would take 100 years to get through the waiting list. That's normally how that gets calculated. If they process 100 vouchers a year, then it's a 10-year waiting list. But if they process 500 vouchers a year, then it's a 2-year waiting list. What if they process 900 vouchers a year? Well, then you're a little over a year wait. So it all depends upon what the turnover rate is for that housing authority. So knowing what number you are on the waiting list is only one part of the equation. You have to also know, how many vouchers they turn over each year. Sometimes they'll tell you that if you ask them, but most times they won't. And many times, most folks at the housing authority don't even know that. However, in the housing authority's annual plan, there's a table that they have to complete about the voucher program and the waiting list in particular, and they have to include the turnover rate in there. So if you can track down the housing authority's annual plan, most of the time you can find that statistic. So look up your housing authority, Google your housing authority, and Google the annual plan. Usually, the bigger housing authorities will have their annual plan, and they'll have a link to it somewhere on the website. So if you can find out the turnover rate and you know what number you're on the waiting list, you can usually calculate how long it's going to be. All right. Still trying to bring in Capricorn at Heart. I'm going to go ahead and hit that kick button, and maybe you can try coming back in again. If anybody wants to join me and ask a question, hit that join button, and you can come on video and ask me a question, anything about affordable housing, Section 8, whatever. I'll answer on the fly. If you're camera shy and you just want to ask a question in the comments, do that, and then I'll answer it. I'm here until about 4 o'clock, so another 45 minutes or so. And I'll just keep breezing through these questions in the comment stream. Let's see, in Montgomery County, Maryland, how can I find out if I was placed on their waiting list when I applied? So the Montgomery County Housing Authority waiting list, Nate, it just closed recently, right? Yeah, so it just closed recently, and it was an online application. Is that right, Nate? I think, yeah, I'm pretty sure it was an online application. So Tony Mac, you applied online. You probably, I didn't use their application. So I'm assuming they asked for your email address. Well, that means that they're likely going to email you. And if it's a lottery, then most of the time, the larger housing authorities that have a little firmer procedures will email everybody. So they'll run you through the random lottery. The computer, let's say there's 10,000 applicants and they're only choosing 1,000 people to add to the waiting list. The computer will run this random number generator, pick 1,000 people, and so then 9,000 people will be sent an email saying, sorry, you didn't make the cut, better luck next time. And 1,000 people will get an email saying, good news, you have been selected in the random lottery to be added to our waiting list. So the answer to your question is in Montgomery County, I think, and Nate, if you want to do a little bit more research and verify and then post over in the comments to make sure that that's what's going to happen in Montgomery County. But I'm going to guess that that's the basic procedure there. All right, starting to get a few more people into the talk show. If you have a question for me about affordable housing or Section 8, hit that join button and I'll bring it into the chat. Remember, if you have a slow connection, a 3G connection, sometimes it's difficult to because of bandwidth to bring you in, but we'll try it anyway. And I'm going to keep buzzing through questions here. We had a few questions coming into this event that had been asked between last week and today. So Rhonda asked, who makes the rules for the Section 8 program? Would it be HUD or Section 8? It's a good question. First of all, there is no such thing as an entity called Section 8. A lot of people say the Section 8 office or Section 8 did this or Section 8 requires that. And there is no entity called Section 8. Section 8 literally is a part of the Federal Housing Act. It's, the part before it's called Section 7 and the part after it's called Section 9. So it's literally, several pages of a federal law that's in Section 8 of that federal law. There is no entity called Section 8. However, the housing program is managed by HUD, and they also manage other programs that are also called Section. You have Section 221D3, Section 202, Section 811. These are all sections of the housing law that authorize various housing programs. So the first part of the answer is it's definitely not Section 8 because Section 8 isn't a thing. The other part is, okay, who does make the rules? Well, that's even a more complex answer because HUD administers the program on behalf of the country. So this is a federal law created by Congress. It's managed by the Department of Housing and Urban Development. However, the Department of Housing and Urban Development basically subcontracts at the local level with housing authorities or other housing agencies to manage the Section 8 program. So, for example, the Chicago Housing Authority manages the program for the city of Chicago, the Atlanta Housing Authority for the city of Atlanta, the King County, Washington Housing Authority manages it for King County. And they get to also make a certain set of local rules. So HUD takes the federal regulations the law that Congress created, and then HUD and the executive branch, which HUD's part of, makes a set of rules at the federal level, and then they give some authority to folks at the local level, at the housing authority, to make other rules. So the answer to the question is that rules are made at different levels, and the reason for the local level rules is to make sure that some local housing priorities get addressed. So if San Diego has a serious problem with homelessness that Madison, Wisconsin does not, and I'm not saying that Madison doesn't, I'm just using it as an example, then the Section 8 program can be better catered in San Diego if there's a layer of local rulemaking. So that's kind of why it's done that way. So hopefully that answers your question. All right, I have an open seat here, and if you want to join in and ask me a question, hit that join button. You can ask me anything about affordable housing, Section 8, whatever. I usually feel like I can answer on the fly, and if I can, I'll get back to you. I'm going to check over here to see if there's any other questions that came in. Is the San Francisco Section 8 program open? And the answer to that is no. However, they did recently announce the I think it's the project-based voucher program, and we have information about that on our San Francisco page. If you go there, you'll find information. Project-based vouchers are complicated. I think it's best if you just go to the page and read up on it. It's a very targeted program. There's only specific properties that you can qualify to live at, and that program is a very specific program in San Francisco right now. But if you go to the San Francisco page, just go to affordablehousingonline.com and type in San Francisco. Go to that page, you'll see it. So, all right, I think I have one more question left over, and this might be the shortest blab I've done. And once I so I'm going to answer this question. If you have a question, post it over here on the right or at the bottom if you're on mobile, and I'll get to it. Or you can ask to join the blab, and I'll answer your questions. First week, I've never had anybody on video with me. I wonder if that email even went out. So the last question that I have, Miram, if I'm paying less than 50% of my income for rent, am I eligible for Section 8 housing? If I'm paying less than 50% of my income for rent, am I eligible for Section 8 housing? Yes, you are. So eligibility for Section 8 or any other affordable housing resource is not based on how much of your income you're paying for rent, though that is a metric that's used by many housing professionals to determine whether it's called overburdened. If you're paying more than 30% of your income for rent, you're determined to be rent overburdened. However, that's not an eligibility criteria for Section 8 or any other housing program. The criteria for eligibility for Section 8 is if you are at 50% of the area median income, which means are you earning half of what the average family earns? That's the same size as you. So let's say there's two of you in the household. They're gonna look at, okay, what does the average family in your geographic location that has two people, what do they earn? And if you're at 50% of that or less, you qualify. Now, on top of that, the Section 8 program actually targets folks even lower at the 30% level. So if you are earning 30% of the area median income, there's a certain number of folks that the Section 8 program requires to be served. So, but the main metric you should be concerned about is the 50% of AMI. What's AMI? How do I know if I'm 50%? Go to affordablehousingonline.com, type in your city and state, and you'll be given a market report for that city and state or county and state, and we have it's called income limits. You look for the 50% income limit for your family size. There'll be a little table there, and that'll tell you whether or not you qualify. So qualification is not based on how much of your rent you're paying for housing. Okay, I'm out of questions that came earlier. Looks like I have one more question that just came in from Too Intense to Handle. Can you get your Section 8 voucher back if you didn't find a place in time? I had my voucher for 10 years and was on good terms with the housing authority. So this is alluding to the problem of the amount of time a housing authority gives you to locate a rental apartment before your voucher expires. And normally that's 60 to 90 days from the time the voucher is issued. So if you're unable to find a rental opportunity in 60 to 90 days, then the voucher may terminate. And it sounds like in this case, your voucher was terminated. Unfortunately, if it has already been terminated, I'm afraid you're too late. I'm afraid that anything you could have done to save it should have probably been done before the voucher was revoked. One of the best things I can tell someone who's in this situation where they're about to lose their voucher because they can't find a rental is make sure you document your rental search. Take excruciating notes about who you called, what rental they had, what they told you when you called them, whether or not they said no Section 8. Every single property you call, take notes, date and time you called them. And so when it comes time to ask the housing authority for an exception, it's taken me more than 60 days, I need another month, you can show to them this piece of paper. Here's my log. Here's all the properties that I called, and I'm not having success, but I'm working hard at this. It's the same thing that I would tell someone who's applying for employment benefits. You need to be actively looking for a job if you're going to get an unemployment check. Well, you need to log all the job applications you submitted, all the businesses you called looking for a job. Same thing with the housing search. So unless there was some legal liability with the housing authority taking away your voucher, and it was an undue act where they really shouldn't have taken your voucher away. If they followed the procedure, I'm not sure there's any way to get your voucher back. But it never hurts to make a phone call to somebody at the housing authority, or even contact your local city government, city council person, and ask for them to make a phone call for you to try and get you to the right person and plead your case. So hopefully that helps you. Okay, so I just got reminded that one of the main things I always do on this is talk about the new Section 8 openings, and I haven't done that. So I'm gonna go ahead and jump to that right now. And so right now this week, we have 3 new Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher waiting list openings that our team found. We have a total of 443 Section 8 waiting lists that are open or opening soon as of today. And we have a few notable ones to talk about. If you want to see all of them, just go to affordablehousingonline.com and click on that Section 8 waiting lists link at the top. It's a little green button. Big green button, actually. And if you're on mobile, you just have to hit the little 3 lines and it'll give you that. So this week we have Chattanooga, Tennessee. The Chattanooga Housing Authority has announced the opening of its Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher waiting list. It's opening for 1 day only on October 19th. That's 5 days from now. It's next week. It's open from 12:01 a.m. to 11:59 p.m. So for the entire day, starting just after midnight on October 19th. Pre-applications are online only, and there have been no preferences identified. They will place 1,000 applicants on the waiting list by random lottery. Now, I can tell you, particularly in Chattanooga, and I think we've covered some of this, but particularly in Chattanooga, there's a bit of a problem there where landlords tend not to want to rent to folks who have Section 8. And I've read news accounts where between half and 2/3 of all voucher holders end up losing their voucher because they can't find a rental in that 60 to 90 day period I just talked about. So, the good news is that Chattanooga opens its waiting list every year, I think, at least for the last couple of years. The bad news is that they're opening it because most people who actually end up on the waiting list and get offered a voucher can't use it because they can't find a rental. So one way you can combat that is go into it knowing where you can find a landlord that will accept your Section 8 voucher. So, start your housing search, figure out if there's a particular rental company that accepts vouchers, and one tip that is any federal housing community that receives federal subsidy can't turn you away with a voucher. So that's one way to combat that problem. But anyway, Chattanooga opening on October 19th next week. All right. Here's another one, and we rarely find stuff in Georgia, so I'm always happy to make Georgia announcements. The Marietta Housing Authority Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher waiting list is opening from October 20th until October 22nd. We haven't found any opening or closing times yet. We've reached out to get clarification, and we'll post an update on the Marietta and Cobb County, Georgia pages. Pre-applications are online only. No preferences have been identified. And it is a random lottery, but we haven't yet been able to verify the number of applicants that we placed on the lottery waiting list, on the waiting list through the lottery. So we'll continue to try and get clarification on that, and we'll post that to our Marietta Housing Authority and Cobb County pages. And then the last opening we'll talk about is the Housing Authority of Champaign County and Champaign County, Illinois. Their Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher waiting list is currently open on a limited basis from September 24th until December 31st of this year. And according to their website, this waiting list is only open for persons who are involuntarily displaced from their permanent residence by a federal, state, or local government action in Champaign County. So pay attention to that very specific language when you go to apply. Obviously, it's a very specific group of people they're trying to target with this opening. Pre-applications are available online or at 4 different locations throughout the county or throughout Champaign. And you can get more information about that on our site. There have been several preferences identified, and you can find that information as well on our site. And it's a lottery, and they have not specified the number of applicants they'll put on the list. We'll continue to try and get that information and keep that posting updated. So those are the 3 new listings we found this week. And if you want to see all 443 that we've cataloged, just go to affordablehousingonline.com to the Section 8 waiting list page. And we've got all the information there for you. All right, so I have this open seat. If anyone wants to join and ask a question, you're welcome to. I've answered so far all of the questions, so I'm going to go ahead, and if no one else has a question for me or wants to come on video and ask a question, I'll go ahead and end today's talk. Last call on that open seat if anybody wants to ask a question. All right, so thanks again for joining me for Affordable Housing Talk with Dave Layfield. If you've got any questions, you can continue to post them here in the comments, and we'll get to them next week. And we always do a Blab recap. We're a little bit behind. I think we're almost finished in the last 2 talk shows. So if you want to read about what we talked about and the questions we answered, you're welcome to do that in the Blab recap that we post on our blog. So anyway, I hope everyone has a good week. I will talk with you next week.